Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And I feel like you're talking really fast because tonight we're not going to bring him in quite yet. We always give a fishing report. But our guest is actually getting on the road right after we talk to him. So, talk about the exciting life of a fisherman and all that goes into that. I'm sure that we are going to ask and hear a little bit about that. But first of all, I would... Look at your face. I normally turn to Josh. I'm like, how was fishing for us this last weekend? But I'm going to spill the beans and I'm not even giving you this chance because he was grumpy about this. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. I'm just saying that Josh was really kind or whatever. Because you guys, the problem is we go fishing all the time and we both go fishing, which sounds dumb and obvious, but then we are like each other's worst enemy because it's a green screen behind us. And if it wasn't, it's because you could see how messy our house was. No, that's not actually true because it's not that bad, but we have honestly had to create a few weekend days where we stayed home to like clean the house and do laundry and all those normal people things. And it's like, it was terrible.
All work and no fishing makes Josh a grumpy boy.
Because then on Sunday, what happened is we finally went out. It was awesome. Well, it was kind of awesome. We were looking for panfish. We found some great smallies. So I was happy about that. And Josh was maybe not super thrilled. But what also happened is the thunder came in and the lightning came in. And we're okay with like a little bit of rain, but there's safety first. And so when it is thunder and when it is lightning, we had to get off the water. And what did we get? Like a solid 3 or 4 hours of fishing?
Yeah, maybe. And when she says we found some great smallmouth, she means she caught a 3-pound largemouth and she caught a 3-pound smallmouth and proceeded to catch 1-pounder after 1-pounder. And all mine probably were as big as my hand. And then she goes, and then I pulled up a bluegill the same size as the bass I was catching, and she goes, "Oh, that's a good bluegill," and I was like,
"It was."
And then it started raining on me. I'm like, I'm out of here. Let's go do something.
So ultimately, water temps are in the low 70s and fish are setting up into summer patterns. And so, we had a lot of heat settle in really quick for a while there. And then at least where we are in Wisconsin, it's kind of mellowing out. And then that rain, I think that front was really kind of pushing fish to chew because they were either really tight to the wood and probably eating minnows, or they were out deep chasing those bait balls. So whatever you chose to kind of throw at, the option was yours this past weekend. And I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, it was pretty classic. There was a strong front coming in from the south. It was blowing right onto this super rocky point, and it was like loaded with fish. And there's so much structure in this lake, and I love fishing structure, and I tried, and it didn't work. And we were just going to go back and just fish the point. And it just poured on us, and I was just done with it. But anyway, enough about us. I'm going to take Emily's job, and I'm going to bring in our guest because Emily said, "Oh, the life of a fisherman," and I feel like you cut him short. This is pro angler, rod builder, tackle designer,
new company owner,
Matt Stefan.
All around awesomeness. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
How's it going,
me.
Matt?
Good. I tell you, when you start rattling all that off, I start getting stressed because there's a lot of moving parts that I've got to keep moving forward in lots of different directions. And I'm finding myself to be working way harder now than I did in my previous corporate job, which is, I'm very, very happy to be doing it because it's within the fishing industry. So it's a lot more fun, but lots of moving parts.
And I forgot YouTube star.
Well, and did you say dad?
Yeah, and dad, husband, chicken farmer.
Yeah, chicken farmer.
Raspberry picker. That's what I heard. All of these things.
Just keep adding it on, guys.
Now I'm just getting more and more stressed now. Thanks, guys. I feel like I got to get out there and pick the raspberries before I leave for the week.
That's why you leave the kids at home. They can do that.
Yeah. Well, like I was telling to you before the show, the chickens have been beating us to them. So the chickens are on my naughty list. I'm not real happy. Although we've gotten to the point where we're losing chickens daily. We started with 17 last year, and we've had a fox that has been hanging out for a while. So we're down to 5. We're down to
Oh
5.
wow.
Yeah. And two of the 5 are what I would consider naughty chickens. Like they like to poop on our front door step and stuff like that. They know they shouldn't be up there, but I tell you, as soon as I leave, they go up there and they leave a nice little surprise for us.
I'm betting their sassiness is the reason they're still around. So you might
Probably.
be in some bad luck. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably be
Those will be
stuck
the
with
last two.
these for like 20 years now at this point. How long do chickens live?
I have no
clue.
idea.
Apparently a year with foxes.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, like that was a COVID thing. My wife's like, if you build the coop, I'll take care of the chickens. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. I'm like, I know how this goes. So I built the coop and now I take care of the chickens. And it's like when we had 17, it was funny because they'd follow you everywhere. And it was like having 17 dogs. Like you'd be tripping over them. Like they just, as soon as they see you, they think you're bringing a treat or something. And they're a handful. They're a handful.
That's crazy.
Oh my gosh, that is really crazy. Man. So normally, I guess when we start the show, we ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, but I think Josh did a little bit of that. And I think we've done like a little bit of that here. But the other thing that we mentioned is that after today's show, you are traveling. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've got my last Major League Fishing Invitational event of the year. Practice starts tomorrow. This is one of the few times I've had a tournament that's close. So it's over in La Crosse, Pool 8 of the Mississippi River. So it's exactly 2 hours for me. I actually thought about leaving tomorrow morning and driving right to practice. But I've got a brother-in-law that lives there, and that's where I stay. So I figured I'd just drive over tonight after we got the kids down to bed and all that. But yeah, so we're sitting really good. I'm sitting in 5th place in the AOY standings, and I've got a big cushion, about 75-point cushion over 9th place, and the top 8 qualify for the BPT tour. So I need to go there. I need to, if I finish in the top 75, I'm guaranteed in, and it's out of 150 guys. So the top half of the field. And if I don't finish in the top 75, I'll need some help from the other anglers. I'll need some of them to not do so well, which I would much rather seal it up by my own fishing versus having to hope for somebody else not to do well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I heard that your new go-to bait these days was what some people are calling the fuzzy dice.
No, not that one. Not that, dude. So I did a video of where I was not happy at all with that bait. And I gotta tell you, I got a lot of comments from people that completely disagreed with me, but it does not fit my fishing style. I was not pleased with it. I had a little challenge against my 6-year-old boy, soon to be 7-year-old boy, where he used a core tackle hover rig and I used the dice. And I don't remember, he beat me pretty good. Like, I think it was 4 fish to nothing. We did it for an hour. So I was not real happy. I'm not a big fan of the dice, as you could tell probably from that video. I am a big fan of the core tackle hover rig.
Okay, so for people who don't know what the dice are, I mean, you don't happen to have one around you. I don't mean to put you on the spot because I didn't even prepare you for this. No, it's like a square
chunk of plastic.
Yeah.
With the
cube.
skirt legs hanging out of it.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
so it looks. Yeah.
The one I was using actually had like the dice marks on it. So like 5 dots on one side, 2 dots on another, and then it's got a lot of rubber skirt material protruding out of it as tentacles. And I'm sure people are catching fish with it. It just, for me, it was like every time you moved it, because of the flat side, it was like, it felt like you had a big ball of weeds on your bait, right? So it was like you had no feel. The bait didn't do anything. And It's not for me. Unless something happens, I am completely done with the dice. I've got enough tackle to use up and enough tackle that's still out there that I haven't tried. That my 1 hour experiment with it was enough for me.
Was plenty.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it kind of started out as a fun experiment from some of the different bait maker forums. And so, I don't know, as a rod maker, I mean, you have to like kind of applaud the idea and the creativity that somebody hasn't thought of that yet, but the actual application of it just doesn't seem to pull through. But it's amazing because there are people out there that seem to love it. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's times I think you can make a fish bite almost anything. You know, like I really do feel like if you're moving something through the water column, there'll be something that may eat it. So, you know, it maybe somebody used it and they had a couple of feeding windows and caught them really good. Maybe they figured out how to use it. I just not right for me. I feel like we've talked about it enough already. That's how I feel about it.
Well, so then you mentioned the other thing, the core tackle hover rig. So for like people that don't know what the hover rig is yet, which I would be astounded if you are listening to a fishing podcast or watching this show, you should have heard of this by now. But if you haven't, can you kind of walk us through it and then touch on why you were using the core tackle hover rig afterwards.
Yeah, so the hover rig was something that I came up with to solve a problem that I had with the hover strolling technique, which was where you take a 90-degree jig hook and you insert it slightly behind the head of a plastic bait, and then you insert a nail weight into the head. And by doing that, you transfer the weight of the bait into the body. And because of the 90-degree jig hook, you'd get really cool gliding motion, very different action out of a soft plastic. The technique is phenomenal. I mean, I was going out catching piles and piles of fish. The problem is because the hook is just a jig hook, like an unmolded 90-degree jig hook. The hook would either pull out of the plastic and you'd go through one plastic per fish, or you would lose your nail weight. And I was using tungsten nail weight. So between the two, I was going out catching 15, 20 fish really very easily. And I was going through 2-3 bags of plastics and nail weights every time out, which, you know, is I'm more than happy to give up a bait per fish. But it was a lot of these fish were like 8 and 10 inches where I was going through plastics really fast. And I started playing around with transferring weight down the shank of a hook and came up with the current hover rig, which is I gotta have one somewhere around here. I know I got one. Here's one. So I'll take it out of the bait. Well, I'll show you the bait first. So this is just a Berkeley gilly I've got it in, and you can see, hopefully you can see, the hook eye is back a little bit, and what that does is when the bait falls, it glides through the water column because of the hook. So it's just it really is a pretty simple design. So I'm very, very surprised that nobody has ever done anything like it. But it's basically just a hook with the weight transferred down, and then we got some cone keepers to really lock it in. We've got the nice point, which when you pull the plastic up and over really locks the bait in place. And because of that, you can go out and catch 10 fish and not use up one bait. So it really works very well and has been received extremely well by the fishing community, to the point where we've got, so there's several large companies now that are creating very, very similar hooks. Let's put it that way.
Nice.
And then can you show us again how you hooked that? Because I know you kind of talked about it, but it is actually really,
Oh, here's one.
well, I was going to say unique, but I mean, it's kind of simple.
Yeah, it is. Once you realize what to do, it is. So this is just a fluke that I've got these things laying all over at this point. But what you do is you take your plastic, and instead of inserting through the nose like we do with traditional jig heads, you actually start about a 1/4 inch behind the head like that, and then you just thread it on, and you thread on enough to the point where you'll get your plastic slides up to the hook eye or the weed guard. I mean, I actually take So right now, all of them we produce have a weed guard. I take the weed guard off probably 70% of the time. But in either case, you slide it up to where that weed guard is or the hook eye. And then once you get that, you have your little tip that's like, what do I do with that? Well, what I do is I put a finger on the hook eye. I kind of push that, slides right over the cone, and then that cone locks it in place. So this is almost like having now a jig head that's been molded into a bait. Like it's really, really locked in place, and does a great job of prolonging your baits and at the same time getting the same action that you would get out of a traditional hover strolling technique.
And then with that weed guard, is that something that just pulls out? You cut it? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, I generally just, if you bend it back and forth 5-6 times, it'll snap off at the base. You can cut it off if you want. We currently have orders in for hover rigs that don't have a weed guard as well, because we can offer them at a slightly lower price. So we figured we might as well do it, because I know a lot of people are taking them off. So at that point, if people have the option to buy them without, that's probably a better way to go. We're not nobody's wasting anything at that point. So yeah, we're up to 6 sizes. We've got another couple sizes, some heavier stuff coming out, some bigger. I give you a sneak peek of some of them, like a lot bigger sizes.
Oh,
which are more for like deep ledge fishing and bigger soft plastics. So yeah, we're trying to establish ourselves as like the hover rig people. I mean, I feel like we came out with it, and we don't really want to get washed away by the competitors that's coming out with some very similar products. But having said that, I did talk to a patent attorney for a design patent, and this individual who's very good within the fishing industry actually said, why go for a design patent? He thinks we can get a utility patent. So we've applied for a utility patent, and that's an expensive, long process. But if we can get it, that might solve some of the issues going forward, I guess. In either case, it's we started Core Tackle really with the idea that we were going to try to, make a little bit of side cash and at the same time make baits that we want to use. Right. So like if we could fund projects that we want for ourselves, it would be worthwhile. And really what we've found now, not that we really haven't made any money on it because we just keep putting it back into the company, but we feel like we have an opportunity to actually establish a brand. And that's why going after things like the patent and, if we can get that, it kind of establishes us a little bit more as an actual brand with some brand value versus just Johnny Schultz and Matt Stefan.
And I love hearing kind of the whole evolution of the whole idea and the product and all of that great stuff. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And when you were talking about it, you said that originally you were using the tungsten nail weights. So is that what you have there? Is that tungsten? Is that lead? What does that look like?
No, so it's actually interesting. We've explored making a lot of tungsten as well. The thing is, most traditional hover strolling weights are very, very light. So we're talking a 32nd of an ounce, 3/64. Like we came out with an 1/8 ounce one, which is a very popular size right now. But in reality, you're talking very, very light weights. And as much as we want to do tungsten, the funny part is you become so small that you almost don't lock the bait in place nearly as well. And there's no reason to go to tungsten if the sizes that we have with lead are functioning just fine. Like we originally thought, well, we're going to have issues rigging baits on, but we're really not. I guess there's potential. I mean, we're definitely exploring it, but there's potential to go with much smaller hook sizes and get bigger weights from that standpoint. But it's really not. We haven't found that there's a huge need for it. The biggest need really is the fact that some people live in states where they're not supposed to use lead.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that brings up a good point too, is that all of us, in the United States should keep in mind that there's always that overlooming, lead-free initiative, which is not, it's not in and of itself a bad thing. It's just something we all should be cognizant
Yep.
of, because there's lots of Europe that's all lead-free. It's been coming down the road for decades now. It gets brought up every year. But in this case, so like traditionally, when you have the jig head on the front of the bait, making it heavier to get down further, you're adding bulk to your presentation. And that was the kind of the allure of tungsten, is you could keep your presentation all of similar size, but with your guys' you're actually hiding that weight and distributing it in a way where you don't necessarily want to be heavier, because you're going to destroy the whole purpose of having that until you get down to a deeper depth, right? So
Yeah, and there's you add additional action to the further that you can stretch the lead out. So if you can stretch weight further in the back, you can create different actions. So yeah, it's I've always tinkered with tackle, but I've never gotten into this type of detail. But we've really done a lot of trial and error. We've spent a lot of money on different molds and different forms. I mean, we've got the hover rig, and then we came out with our tush, what we call the tush. It stands for the ultimate swim bait head. And that one we actually had designed before the hover rig, but we wanted to really get it right. And we went through, I think, 4 or 5 different versions, to the point, like, it was almost frustrating. I mean, it was like you spend a bunch of money to get molds made and prototypes made, and then it's like, no, it's just not right. And then you tinker with it. And every time you make a change, you have an idea as to how you think it's going to perform. But what I found is a lot of times you make a change, and then that change results in another issue. Mm-hmm. So to get it to how we want it, because we really don't want to just come out with products that are kind of already out on the market. Our approach to this is we want to come up with products that solve problems or are different enough to really stand out from competitor stuff. So, as an example, I mean, this is our swim bait head. So when you look at that, you'd say, well, how is that a swim bait head? But it's the same idea as the hover rig. We transfer all the weight into the swim bait, which does a lot of things. In terms of action, you get a lot more belly roll out of your bait. You don't have a big jig head in the front of the bait, which actually acts as a negative thing when you're fighting a fish. When they come up and jump, that head gives the fish leverage, and the further the weight is from the actual hook point in the fish's mouth, the more leverage they can get. So by moving the weight down, we find we don't lose nearly as many fish. The baits last longer on it because, again, the bait's locked in it. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I actually did a video where I think I gave like 10 or 12 reasons why I'm like, I think this is superior than a traditional jig head, swim bait jig head. So, I'm sure the products aren't for everybody, but we feel like, there's a lot of anglers like ourselves that recognize some potential issues with some products that are on the market. And if we can come up with something better, or what we think is better, or solve some of those issues, then we'll try to do it.
Well, and I think it's a little bit funny that you said, like, oh, it might not be for everybody. And because, to be honest, that's one of the things I was sitting here thinking is, for you as a bait maker, as an angler, to come up with these things, to try something different in the first place. I think that's something that, a lot of anglers, well, I guess there's a few trains of thought. Some anglers go out and they just always want to do their old favorite that works. And that's super cool. But then there's that other type of angler that always wants to do something different, but to come up with something different in the first place is like hard. And so to have done that, I think is, really cool. But you're also in the unique position that then you have to convince others that it is awesome, and I think in some cases that is hard. And recognizing that it's not for everybody, honestly, might be the first step.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, I am that person that will sit there and judge products, hence the dice. Like, it doesn't, at this point, I like to think that my experience allows me to really dissect a bait quick. Now, having said that, there's been some baits that where I use them and I was like, I'm not digging this. And I kind of put them aside, and then I find out, I'm really missing the boat. Like a good example is when the chatterbait came out. I was one of the first people to have a chatterbait, but I didn't know how to use it. Like a chatterbait, in my opinion, is one of the more technical baits to use in order to really generate a lot of bites. And if you don't really dial in that bait, you can throw it a lot and not really generate strikes. And so for me, I had it. I played around with it. I actually fished it more like a swim jig, more straight retrieve kind of swim jig style stuff. And I did very, very little success with it. So I kind of put it down and stayed with my swim jig. And it just was one of those things where so many people were catching fish on it. I picked it back up, but it probably was a couple of years later. Now it's one of those baits that's in my arsenal. I kind of forced myself how to learn how to use it, but and I've caught a pile of big fish on it this year for this season, and it's just one of those things where I'm very critical of baits I see. I know it can be a detriment to myself, like it was in that case with the chatterbait, but I also feel like as an angler, we have the right to choose to use what we want to use. And there's a lot of people out there, like I get on my videos all the time. If I talk positively or negatively of a bait, I always have people saying the opposite in the comment section. And I respect that. Fishing is in my opinion, fishing is 50% mental. It's confidence, right? Like if you're confident throwing a block of wood with a treble hook, then stick
A
with
fuzzy
it. I mean, I
dice.
say that in my videos all the time. Like I'm not trying to convince people that they're wrong in what they're doing. I just want to give, with respect to core tackle, I just want to give people another option. And if some people like it, hopefully they'll keep buying it. If some people try it and they don't like it and they want to go back to what they were using before, I'm all for that, because that's what the sport is in my case. I mean, it's a mental confidence game. And if you're more confident throwing what you've been throwing, then by all means stick with it.
Well, and I think that's a really great point, and to give an example. So I'm sitting here listening to this, and I love talking to you, all you bass anglers that we have on and talk with us, because like Emily has said before, she's outed me all the time. I take all of your guys' secrets and I turn them into panfish baits. Yeah. And so I'm really excited because I've been following the whole hover rig thing. We watch a lot of your videos at our house while we're eating supper and stuff. And so to watch
your wife cracks me up.
Well, and we're gonna have to have her on sometime to talk about live scope, just so you know. But
okay.
So, but no, you've been talking about coming out with the extra sizes, and this is, you gave us a sneak peek of the large size, and so I was coming into this very excited about the prospect of getting some of the 16ths and the 32nds to fit into some of our crappie baits. We just got some new swim bait molds from Epic Bait Molds, so that's gonna be really sweet to try in there. It takes your technique and that tackle takes away an element that a lot of anglers struggle with, and that is choosing the color of your jig head. So you can choose all you got to do is you got to choose the color of your bait, and that's what it is. You're taking away a whole element of like, oh, maybe I need to switch to this or that.
Or they must hate that
right.
color.
You can literally match the hatch and not even worry about if that jig head's interfering. So that's one of the things I'm really interested in. Going back to your larger size, I was like, that blew my mind, and for like a split second, because I'm like, oh man, that's going to be sweet for walleyes in the spring.
Yeah, because
that's going to be, we fish a little bit deeper river waters, and we're vertical jigging flukes and swim baits, and it's going to be awesome to fish 15, 20 feet with some of those deeper ones in the river, have a little bit different action than everybody else, and it's just something fun to try. So
yeah, that's a really good point, and that's something that I've never thought of, except for the fact that when I have the baits made, one of the first questions, we use ICAST Industries, who's located in Springfield. They're one of the biggest. I think they're the biggest in the US in terms of molding. But you know, one of the questions was, do you want to paint them? And I'm like, no, well, there's no reason to paint them. So that's a very valid point, and I would actually agree with that. And the cool thing is, like, we're fully aware of like the value of these in terms of a lot of different sizes. So we do have the size 1 32nd ounce and the size 1 16th ounce, which is good for bigger crappie baits, like, you know, in that 2.5 inch range. But I actually want to come out with probably a size 2, if not even a little bit smaller, like a size 4, just to kind of you know, go along with that, because I mean, I know they're good for crappie. I've caught my share of crappie, right, doing it. And
Crappie hate them. I
yeah.
heard that they hate them.
Yeah, they don't like them.
we feel like there's a really good market there. And the thing is, I've always been like a micro bait fisherman for bass as well. So, you know, even the size 1 hook is too big for a lot of the things that I kind of some of my little crappie baits that I like to carry over to bass fishing. So I definitely want to go smaller, and I think that that's something that we for sure will do.
That's awesome. I think you're right on hitting the nail right on the head. Like, I think a number 4 is like the sweet spot if you're talking about like crossing over between bass and panfish. Like that's a really great size of a hook. And the nice part, and what a lot of people don't realize, and what you touched on a little bit earlier, all this comes together, is that the smaller hooks, you can literally just start reeling, and they, like those lighter wire hooks, they just pop right into the fish most of the time, and you don't have to make a giant hook set. And then with your rig being the way it is, with the weight internally, there's the weight is closer to the hook point anyway, and there's less leverage. And so you really, unless you're really fishing a lot of heavy cover where you're, you know, bending that hook a lot, you know, Emily and we actually this year we've probably caught some of the biggest bass that we've ever caught, like in the last couple months. And it's all on, we almost all of our tackle that we make is on number 4s.
Oh wow.
Just because we love that size. It's a good size to fit, like a 3-inch bait will fit on it, and down to like an inch bait. And I've, you know, dicked around with molds and put, you know, made it so a number 4 will fit in like a 1/64th all the way up to the 3/16. So we have that same hook size, just with different lead on the front of it.
Yeah.
So it'll be cool to have some of those smaller hook sizes in the future. But I think we're still going to pick up some of those number 1s, because that's going to be awesome, I think.
Yeah, they actually are just put up on Tackle Warehouse. Got them Tuesday. What is today? What, Thursday? I think they put them up Tuesday. So they're out. We've had them on our website for a little bit now, for probably a week or so, but we really haven't announced it. The demand has been good enough to the point where it's like we had to like really space out marketing, as well as kind of actually just stop doing some of our marketing, like where we didn't expect to have the demand we had. Well, we didn't know what to expect. So when we released it, I mean, we blew through our inventory in a day, and then it was like, okay, we got to put additional orders in, and we finally are at the point now where we've got everything in stock at this point, you know, and you know, as soon as I feel like we're good with stock, you get an order from somewhere and we're having more built. So it's been a really good, I don't want to call it experiment, but a really good process so far. And, you know, it's something I enjoy doing. Like, I've always felt like I've had that entrepreneur kind of part to me, and this is kind of filling that void. So I don't know where it's going to go. For all I know, you know, this is a big fad and everything will go away. But, you know, our goal, I mean, we've got like 4 or 5 other really good designs that we're prototyping and testing. And it's like, we don't even know when the right time to come out with the stuff is, because we only have so many funds, and if the funds that we're making right now are going back into additional inventory, the hover rig, which has been really good, and the tush is actually outpacing the hover rig, which is surprising. Not surprising to me, but I didn't know that. I didn't think we'd be able to do any better than the hover rig. But it's like we just are trying to expand those lines, which is kind of pushing off the other products because we're just limited by the funds. But it's been exciting, stressful, and nerve-wracking at the same time. Honestly, the number one thing that freaked me out the most that I never even thought of was like when we launched it, all of a sudden I was like overcome with stress of like, oh my God, I'm selling something to people. What if they don't like it?
Yeah.
Like, what if they don't catch fish with it? Like I was sold on it. You know, I was using it for 6 months before we actually produced it. And I'm like, I don't know how you can't really catch fish on it, but what if people don't? What if it's a big flop? And it's like, I feel, you know, I just feel like there's a lot of people out there that trust my opinion. So the last thing I want to do is come to market with something that is not usable.
Right. So I have one more question, and I know Emily is sitting over here, and I'm stealing
No,
all of her questions. But
I was gonna make another Fuzzy Dice reference, and I figured it was too many.
you're done. You're done with the stupid dice. Okay, so my other question is that we've been talking a lot about the hover rig and the core tackle. A lot of this design. What a lot of people may or may not know is that you're a rod builder, you know, like us, and you just came out. Mudhole Custom Tackle has a whole Matt Stefan series of rod builds that you can buy the kits for.
Yeah.
Did you have a rod, or do you have a rod kit in mind that would work well for this setup?
Yeah. So so I've got we put together 4 rod kits, and the idea behind it was, so I've been building my own rods since 2015, like fully, like that's all I've used since 2015 are my own rods. And in my videos, I get a lot of comments where people are asking for the specs, you know, what's the guide measurement, what components. And, you know, I went to Mudhole and I said, is this something that's possible? Just because it would be easy. It would be a lot easier for me just to say, here, go click on this versus me sending, you know, rod specs. And I do it all the time where people reach out and I can't grab them. I mean, I've just got pages and pages of, you know, these are different rod specs. So for myself, so I know what, if I want to build a MB843, I've got all the different components as well as the measurements, and I've just got it ready to go. So, I mean, it wasn't that hard for me to send it to people, and I always did, but it was always like, then when they would go to Mudhole, they'd have to click on 10 different items, right? And in this case, it's a one-click wonder, and they can do it. So yeah, we came out, they came out with those, I'm going to say about a month ago. And one of the rods is the NSJ 871. So it's a 7.3 1 power. So it's basically a medium light, fast action rod. And it's my go-to for hover strolling, especially the lighter weight sizes. I do like to flip the 1/8 ounce size on a light, medium, heavy bait cast rod. But for the most part, that 7.3 medium light spinning rod is a fantastic setup for it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, because we have 2 of those in the boat right now, as a matter of fact, that we like to use for our panfish float rods, if you can believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it. It's an extremely versatile blink. Like it's light enough where you can pretty much do everything. I mean, that's what we go bluegill fishing with my boys. I mean, that's what they use. And then, you know, it doubles as a very versatile finesse rod for bass tactics. You want to throw Ned rigs on it, drop shots on it. You can throw hair jigs on it. I mean, you can pretty much throw any light bass tackle as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, like, you know, if you guys out there, you want to build a rod, go check out Matt's series because he has one for the hover rig. So, go get the kit, build a rod, buy some core tackle, go catch some bass.
Well, and check out Mudhole because talk about some great videos and how
Right.
to.
Oh yeah, they have all of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of those people that don't want to go there, like I said, Emily and I have 7.3 medium lights that we use, and we use them from JT Outdoors, and it's just and if you want to go to Walmart, go get a medium light because that's going to be your overall, good rod for almost anything. If you're just getting into fishing, I know we have a lot of people that are watching that just like to pick up tips. They're not even weekend warriors. They're just like, I go out for a couple hours and I don't know what I'm doing. Go get a medium light because that's going to cover all your bases. It's going to be light enough for panfish. It's going to be heavy enough if you catch something big. That'll be a good spot to start too.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's one of those things. I mean, if I could have two rods, it would be like a 7 to 7.3 medium light spinning rod and a 7 to 7.3 medium heavy casting rod. And those two things, you can pretty much cover the gamut with it. Now, they may not be perfect for everything, but you can really do a lot of different techniques with those two sizes.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. So I'm secretly sitting here laughing that we, talked all about this one rig. You use this rig out of everything. Look at behind you. All the
that's
tackle
green
behind
screen.
you.
I told you that's green screen. I got nothing. I got no tackle. If you could see the floor right now, I'd be embarrassed. Let's put it that way. It's hard to get
the warehouse that you're about to build for your company. So
yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I still throw tackle from all over the place, but I definitely do. Like I've rigged rods for lacrosse today, and I mean I've got a 1/8 ounce hover rig with a Berkeley Maxent Creature Hog, which is a light flipping presentation that I really like to use. And I've got a 3/64 ounce 1/0 hook on a Jackal Rhythm Wag. So it's kind of a soft jerk bait type style bait. And it's just something that, if I see a fish come up busting, I'll throw that over there. Like I don't think it's going to be a huge player on the Mississippi River, which tends to be more power fishing techniques.
Now what you're going to end up using.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it. I mean, I'll probably at the end of the year go back and count how many wayfish I caught on core tackle products because it's a good number. I really have used it, and it's not like I'm using it just to try to sell it. I'm using it because I catch a lot of fish on them. I mean, my boys and I have been fishing Wednesday night bass tournaments when I'm home. We've got them all summer long. I think there's 20 Wednesdays, and we've had a lot of success this year where that's pretty much the only bait we're throwing. I mean, my 5-year-old is the snack man, so he kind of controls the snack bag. And yesterday was matchbox racing in the boat. But my 7-year-old he's like a mini me. Like he really everything I see him do from a fishing standpoint reminds me of myself. And I recognize like how annoying I probably was when I was little, because it was like, what did you catch it on? How big was it? Where did you catch it? Like there's 1,000 questions and he does not stop, but he's that hooked on fishing. And it's, I mean, the hover rig is like all he throws. He just at this point, he just rotates soft plastics on it. And I mean, he's caught big bass himself on it this year. He's pretty much every tournament we fish, he's had at least one keeper. I mean, he's catching fish left and right on it behind me. And it's just because it's a really good finesse presentation. Like there's really no wrong way to fish it.
Well, and so speaking of, this is actually, I'm about to let you go because you have a road trip ahead of you, but a perfect timing for this question. So Brian is asking, what are your favorite plastics to put on the hover rig? Or you said that your son uses it all the time. What does he use?
Yeah. So, well, the funny thing is, so Hank, my 7-year-old, doesn't really comprehend the idea of like what should work and not work. He just grabs what he thinks looks good and puts it on. The neat thing with that is a lot of the baits he's used have been really successful to the point now where I'm throwing it. So like as an example, uh he's thrown the Berkeley Power Stinger, and I just happen to have one here. The other one he likes to throw a lot of times is the Yamamoto Seiko, which is similar to this. I mean, they were made to be vibrating jig trailers, right? And the cool thing is, like, this bait we've done underwater filming of, the bait actually, like, when it falls, like, rocks back and forth. So it's just really different. But he catches a pile of fish on them, and those are baits I never would have thought about using. My go-tos are the Jackal Rhythm Wag, the Kitech 4-inch Shad Impact, the Berkeley 4¼ inch Max Scent Flatworm. I really like throwing just soft stick baits on it, like the Berkeley General or a Yamamoto Senko. Like you put one of those on there, and that stupid thing will glide 4 or 5 feet to any direction. I mean, it just is pretty crazy. So there's not there. If I would recommend anything, it would be to not use baits that have big flappers or big paddle tails, because what happens is the flapper creates a lot of drag in the water, so the bait doesn't have the gliding motion that you'd get out of a straight tailed type bait. It doesn't mean you can't catch them on it, but it just tends to not have the same movement.
I'm glad you said that, because that's the opposite of what my brain was thinking. Now that you said it, it makes way more sense. But I feel like my mind is also slightly blown for some reason. So thank you for mentioning that.
You use whatever you want. I mean, you really can. This goes back to what I was saying before. Whatever you have confidence in, try it. Maybe it works.
The first
Maybe
thing
it
you held
doesn't
up was a bluegill, and I'm like, that will catch fish right there.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, so that I took it out, but the Berkeley Gilly is meant to be run upright. But I had a viewer tell me to try to hover rig and rig it on the flat side, and it's like you get a whole dying bait fish glide out of it. It's a completely different use for that bait, and that's what we're finding with the hover rig specifically. Is it's really taking traditional plastics and giving them an entirely different presentation. And that's the cool thing, because it's almost like what I'm kind of seeing is how versatile the rig itself can be, and that's what's leading us to really try it on a bunch of different sizes for different species. And I don't personally feel like this is just a bass tactic.
Yeah.
No. Okay, I'm making that face in part because I feel like we could talk to you for another hour, and maybe
we can keep rolling. We got a little bit more time. I love talking to you guys. It's the scary part is I never know what the question's going to be. Like, you always keep me on my toes, and that's what I love.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm imagining one of these times maybe we're going to have to get in a boat with you or something like that. I always joked about getting you ice fishing, but I heard in one of your recent videos like how much you actually genuinely hate that, and you would have never expressed that amount of concern to my face. So we're skipping that. We'll do something else.
All I'll say with ice, I don't like ice fishing by myself. That's what I don't like. I enjoy ice fishing. It's just I'm not going to go out there by myself and make it happen. I like to go out there with other people that you can have good conversation with, and at the same time they help you set everything up, and there's a lot more work involved with
when the ice jacks are already warm, you don't have to drag it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I like to show up after the tip ups are in, that type of thing. Like that's where I really shine. I'm all about I'll help you pull a fish up, I'll help you catch the fish, but when it comes to like the actual setup and takedown, I'm just like,
I'm just saying, what happens if you put a hover rig on a tip up? Nobody knows yet.
I mean, it honestly, it probably will. I've had a lot of people tell me that it should shine as an ice fishing
Yeah.
jigging bait because
Yep.
with the 90 degree, when you pull up on it, it darts left and right. So you actually get a lot of side to side motion out of it.
Yep.
So we'll see. We haven't had it hasn't been out, so there haven't been anybody that's been able to really test it yet. But I'm sure I'll probably use it some. You know, as much as I am not a huge ice fishing fan, I still do it. You know, a handful of times a year. I mean, when we've got what 5 months of ice on the water, you kind of got to do something to get your fix of fishing. But
Yeah.
Well, then what if your kids like it?
yeah, they do like it. They do like it.
Oh, it's a good thing you know us.
I'll let
Oh my
you guys invite me. I'll show up like a half hour late. You'll be all set up and you'll be good to go.
You don't have to show up a half hour late. We'll set up anyway. Takes Emily 5 minutes.
That's not true. Oh my gosh. But either way, there's lots of adventures to come. But we spent all the time talking about this tackle and everything. So you mentioned Tackle Warehouse, but where do we buy all of your core tackle?
Yeah. Well, the coretackle.com is our personal website. So you can buy everything through that. But we are branching out. So Tackle Warehouse has the product now. We just got an order from Omnia Tackle, Baitworks, which is growing pretty well, especially in like the Ozark region. They've got product now. And I think we've got about 25 like ma and pa tackle shops located throughout the country, and we're getting a lot of requests. So if you have a local tackle shop that you would like to carry it, please let them know that we're looking for lots and lots of dealers. And if you live in central Wisconsin, Taps and Tackle in Stevens Point is the local dealer that carries them.
So like knocking on your door, don't do that.
No, why?
I'm kidding.
No, you can knock on my door. The thing is, I wouldn't really have much to sell you just because we've got a really cool situation. We've got our production facility is a school based out of Northern Illinois that's run by a really good friend of mine, and it's I don't recall the exact term. It's like a secondary school. So the school has a work study program, and the kids do the actual assembly of the packages, and then they ship from that facility. So it's wonderful because they actually get paid while they're doing it. They get credits while they're doing it. And from our standpoint, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like I can't do it here, but knowing that, the class is doing it, there's a lot of good that's out of that. And it's been a really good working relationship. Now there's definite possibility at some point in the future we grow out of that, but we don't want to fully leave that. They would, if we get to the point where the school can't keep up, then we'll figure out what the school can take on, and then we'll have to figure out what to do outside of that, because we think there's a lot of really good value in terms of working with the school.
That's awesome.
That is
so
awesome.
the unfortunate thing is I don't like, if I need product, I actually put an order in myself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's the truth though. It really is. I got a nice shipment of it when I got home Tuesday morning, and it was waiting for me.
That's
great. Awesome. But you are about to head out on some new adventures coming out this weekend. And so for people who want to follow along with that, how do they follow you?
Yeah. Well, they can follow me through my YouTube channel, Matt Stefan Fishing. That's where I do a lot of updates throughout the tournament weeks. Whether like how practice went and tournament recaps of each day. If they want to follow me on other social media, they can do that too. It's basically Matt Stefan Fishing, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't do TikTok. That's the only one I don't do. Everyone tells me I need to do that, so I probably should get into it. But YouTube is my thing right now. I'm really using the other social media accounts just to direct people to YouTube.
Well, and I mean, it's cool because you can get into TikTok in your free time.
Yeah. I don't have any free time right now. And if I do have it, I'm probably going to go fishing. I'm not going to use it on TikTok.
Or like wasting an hour on the Crappie Junction podcast. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
No.
that too. In my travels, fishing podcasts have become like my go-to. Like,
Yeah.
I've definitely have listened to yours in the past. Bass Talk Live is one I like. Low Budget Live, which is Luke Duncan's. I listen to that. Like, a lot of times I just go down these like rat trails of podcasts, but it's so much better. I mean, I enjoy music a lot too, but I just find like if I put a radio station on, it's just like a loop of music. And the podcast, I feel like I'm actually, developing brain cells versus kind of just monotonous driving.
Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully your drive this evening goes smooth, and hopefully this weekend's tournament goes even smoother. So we'll definitely be here rooting for you. Looking forward to hearing the outcome.
Thank you. This has been a long. We've had like 5 weeks since the last tournament, so it's been a long wait. Like I just want to get this over with. I feel like I feel really good about it, but it's fishing and anything can happen, right? The fish don't bite, or I have mechanical troubles, or I get locked out. I mean, anything can happen. So as much as a lot of people are writing me in as one of those top 8 anglers, I need to go out and do some work still. And I'm looking forward to just being done with it, finishing the season off strong, and I can start thinking about next year.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's awesome. And I guess, among all that happening, thank you for taking the time to be here with us this evening.
Yeah, no problem. I love coming on, guys. I appreciate you guys asking me. So whenever you need me, let me know. I'll come in and fill some time for you.
Be careful saying that.
Hey, we should do a live podcast from like the boat one day.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We just have to find a place with good internet. So
I was gonna say, we'll have to figure out a place that's got like we can steal somebody's Wi-Fi from somebody's cabin or something like that.
So where we were just fishing with all the smallmouth has 5G, I think.
Where was that again? I don't know offhand.
We'll tell you off air.
Yeah, we'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
We'll tell everybody else when the season passes. It's a really small lake. Plus, actually, the ramp is crappy, so you wouldn't want to go there anyways.
Those are the best lakes to go to. That's a fact.
And hopefully we're there this weekend. And so we will be able to, I guess, report back on how that goes, because maybe just we landed on the bite perfect last week and now that'll be dead spill out. No, hopefully not. But we're looking for this weekend, and definitely we'll let you guys all know how that's going. And for everybody who took the time to be here with us this evening, thanks for being with us, and looking forward to seeing everyone on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.